Morning. As we go to the Chitas of today, we're holding in the book of Vayikra, first Parsha, we're holding on chapter 4, verse number 1. God spoke to Moses saying, I'll speak to the Jewish people, Lamer saying, Nefesh ki sechta, if a soul of a Jew sins, and by mistake, if he does a sin by mistake, Mikol mitzvahs Hashem, and all the commandments of God, Ashalesia Asena, which you're not allowed to do. And if he does this sin, now she says, our rabbis explain a sin offering is brought only for such a transgression whose prohibition is expressed in the Torah as a negative commandment, and whose willful violation incurs the penalty of being what's called kades, premature death or the hands of God. The unintentional violation is such a prohibition incurs in a sin offering. So a sin offering is not the staman avera that gets lashes, which is most of the averas in the Torah. Talking about an avera that would be chayiv misa. Ma'achas me'ina. The text should have read one of them, since it says of one of them, me'achas me'ina. It means to include the case with someone who has transgressed even part of one of these prohibitions. For example, if one writes a single letter on Shabbos, he's not liable for transgression or prohibition of the Torah law. The Torah law, you have to write 2 letters on Shabbos. If he writes 2 letters, he is liable. Therefore, if he writes one, if one writes a letter shame from the word Shimon, Shimon has 4 or 5 letters. He only wrote 2 letters, which he intended to write. Or he wrote Noach from the word Nachar, which had intended to write the word Nachar, or Dan from the word Daniel, which he had intended to write. Because again, when it comes to laws of Shabbos, it's Melechas Machsheves. It's important to what your intention was. So if I had intended to write Daniel and I wrote Dan, so did I write a word? So since the 2 letters, the names of the word of their own, right? So even though I had intention to write to the word Daniel, which is 5 letters, I only wrote 2 of the letters, Dan. But the word Dan has its own meaning, has its own letter, it's an own word. So therefore, the Torah comes to tell us this. The extra mem teaches us this law, that even though I wrote, you have to write 2 letters. 1 letter, you're not chayiv Torah obligation. You didn't do a Torah sin. But if you wrote 2 letters, even though the 2 letters, I thought to write 5 letters. So I started to write the letter by mistake. I was guiding the word Daniel. Oops, when I got to Dalad Nun, I wrote Dalad Nun. I said, oy vey, it's Shabbos. I am not allowed to write. So, but I wrote the word Dan. So those 2 letters already has a word. And even though you had in mind to do the whole 5-letter word, the 2 letters have a word, and you would have, that's a me'achas, comes to teach us such a sin is considered an aveda, the b'shgaga. You did it unintentionally, and therefore you should bring a carbon. Verse number 3. In Kayin HaMashiach Yechta, if an anointed Kayin sins, bringing guilt to the people, then his sacrifice that he brings, par ben bakar, he has to bring a bull, a young bull. Tamim, it needs to be complete, unblemished. Hashem to God, lechatos, as a sin offering. Now she says the Hebrew, hakoyin hamashiach yetel ashmasam, is a simple meaning that an anointed kohen should sin to bring guilt to the people because he's the kohen gadol. Its medrashic interpretation is he's not obligated to bring a sin offering unless there's a hidden thing together with an unintentional act. As it says, to bring the guilt to the people. And something is hidden from the congregation, and they do. In the plain meaning, according to the Agada, when the holiest priest sins, the holy priest sins, it's in the fault of the people. For they are dependent on him to atone for them and pray for them. And now he has become himself a sinner. So it's basically, it shows on the people also. And that's why it's called Ashma Saham. Par, one might think that it means an old one. Therefore, the Torah says, Ben Bakar shall be a young bull. One might think that it's a very young one. Therefore, the Torah says Par. So it independently means mature animal, thus teaching us that it's not a very young bull. So how do we reconcile both mature and yet young? It refers to it's a bull in its third year. And that's what we're talking about. Not a bull over 3 years old. You'll bring this bull to the entrance of the tent of meeting. Hashem before God. And will put his hands upon the head of the bull. And he'll shech the bull Hashem before God. And the anointed Kohen shall take from the bull's blood. They'll bring it to the tent of meeting. She says, you see that the Torah always calls the Mishkan the Oyel Moed, the tent of meeting. So it's the Mishkan and the temple, to the Heichel, which is the house of Menorah, and the table. That's the Oyel Moed. It's talking about the Mishkan, the door of the Mishkan, not to the door of the whole courtyard, but the door of the Mishkan. And the Kohen dips his finger in the blood. So this is a special chatas. It's not the regular chatas of a Jew, but this is the part. This is like the Yom Kippur chatas, that he sprinkles the blood on the kapitis. The Fnei Hashem as Pnei HaPareches HaKodesh, he sprinkles the blood in front of the curtain. So Rashi is Pnei HaKapitis. Where does he sprinkle the blood? He sprinkles the blood. He sprinkles the blood in the opposite place of holiness, namely between the poles, which were attached to the holy ark. So the poles would protrude the pareches. So they knew exactly where the Aron was, because the two poles, so to say, like stuck out of the kapitis. And what they sprinkled, so they knew where to sprinkle the blood, that it went right in between the two poles. But the blood, although sprinkled in that direction, was not touched the divine curtains. However, if it did touch it, it doesn't matter. And Yom Kippur actually had to sprinkle it on the kapitis. And then the Kohen takes from the blood. He puts it on the horns of the incense altar. This is like almost like the service in the Beis Hamikdash Yom Kippur. In Kippur, they actually went inside the Holy of Holies. Here, he didn't go inside the Holy of Holies. He stayed outside. Apart in the rest of the blood, Yishbech al Musayid Mizbach Ha'ila, he pours it on the oila, on the outside Mizbeach, the sacrificial Mizbeach, which is called the Mizbeach Ha'ila, Asher Pesach Ha'il Moed, which is at the door of the Ha'il Moed, at the front of the Mishkan. Verse 8, that he takes all the fat of the sin offering, and the fat that covers its innards, and all the fat that's on the innards. Now she says, it should be said, it's fat. What does it seemingly superfluous say word bull? Why you have to have the word bull over here? It comes to include another bull. As I mentioned before, this is the bull for a Kohen who sins, and then there's the bull on Yom Kippur. So we're going to learn, the Gemara, the Chacham will learn a lot of the things from one bull to the other bull. There are certain things that say in this bull that doesn't say in the Yom Kippur bull, and the certain things that says in the Kippur doesn't say in this bull. So we compare the two bulls together. Hachatas, the sin offering, the extra hay, even superfluous word over here, the extra hay, comes to include another sin offering, namely the goats that were brought to sin offering to atone on the intentional sin of idolatry. The law regarding kidneys and the fats and the diaphragm. Yarim imena, he takes out from it mina mufchar, from the choicest of the animal. While it's still attached to the animal, he shall not cut the animal into its prescribed pieces before the removal of the fats. The first thing he needs to do is take out the chaylev. Verse number 9. and the two kidneys along the with the fats that's upon it. It's called which is on the flanks. It's he said as alakovid, and the diaphragm, which is over the liver, ala klois, which is with the kidneys. Yasirani takes them out. Just like he did to the just as separate from the bull sacrifice of the peace offering, he does it over here. And the Kayin takes all these things and he puts it upon the smoke on the Mizbeach. She says, like those parts specifically the cause of the ox offer the peace offering. Well, what is specific in the case of the peace offering that is not here? No, nothing at all. So why mention the peace offering altogether? In order to compare it to the peace offering as follows. Just as the peace offering is designated for the specific purpose of peace offering, so too this sacrifice has to be designated for a specific purpose. So again, we see that the Torah puts together and throws in different offerings to teach one to the other. Like Yom Kippur teaches to this offering of the Kohen Gadol sins. Also, the Shlomim teaches us something to this situation, and that is that it has to be, you have to do everything for its job. You cannot do something not knowing exactly what you're bringing the carbon for. You have to know exactly what you're bringing the carbon for to be considered l'ratzain, to be for the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Shchitas Kachim is taught that it's seeming superfluous flesh, just as it was separated, is necessary in order to learn from it the rule that we do not derive a law from another matter which itself only derived and not explicitly stated in scripture. It's a general law that you don't learn from a Gezerah Shava, meaning that in essence, if you learn something from something else, then it's only for that. You can't say that once it's for that, it's for everything else. It's only that you learn from one thing from another that the law says explicitly by the other. But if the law does not say explicitly by the other, but you learn it from somebody else, then it cannot be for the other also. And that's, you don't learn from the Gezerah Shava to other things. Verse 11, say about part and the bull's skin, it's called Besare, and all its flesh, Al Reshev, Al Krav, Kirba, Prasham, its head, along with its legs, its innards, and its waste matter. And Ashes, all these mentioned Al here literally is upon, as expressed adding like Movad, part of. Thus, in addition to explanation given earlier, we just mentioned when the verse 9 says that he shall remove the diaphragm with a part of the liver along with the kidneys, the meaning is I shall remove the diaphragm besides removing the liver and the kidneys. As a part, then he takes all these parts, because this is a chatas, a mechutz lamachna. He has taken out of the camp. Al makom Torah, to a holy place, is exactly like Yom Kippur. Al shefach hadeshen, where he usually throws the ashes, the extra ashes of the mizbeach. The sarafes ala eitzim ve'esh, he has to make over there a fire and burn this animal. Al shefach hadeshen yifrayv, it needs to be burned at the ash dispository. There was a place that they used to put all the ashes of the mizbeach in a pure place. Now she says a makom Torah means since it's out, it was a place outside the city, designated for uncleanliness, namely to cast away plague-stricken stones, which thereby become unclean, and for a cemetery. Therefore, Scripture needed to qualify the distance outside the camp, which in case of Yerushalayim was equivalent to the outside the city, a place that had to be ritually clean over here, self-understood. Couldn't bury the stuff in a cemetery, but it's like outside the city, like a cemetery is outside the city. The chutz lamachna, outside the camp. What means outside the camp? In the time of the desert, where they were set outside in the desert, the name of the camp of the Shechina, the Levites' camp, the general Jewish camp. Because in the Holy Temple of Jerusalem, however, it means outside the city. So in the time of the base in the Mishkan, they went outside the three camps. The camp where God camped, so to say, the camp of the Levites, and the camp of the Israelites. In the time of the Beis Hamikdash, it was outside Yerushalayim. Al Shefach Hadeshen, the places where we poured the shofrim, the ashes, which we removed from the altar, as it says later, Leviticus. Later on, it says, you shall take out the ashes outside the camp. The verse has just told us this. Surely there's nothing to restate it. However, this repetition to teach us that the bull shall be burnt in the ash depository, even if there's no ashes at that time. Verse 13, if the entire community would sin, God forbid, and the matter is hidden from the eyes of the congregation, and the entire Jewish people did a sin that they were not allowed to do, and they incurred a guilt. How is it possible that that should happen? So Rashi says, this is referred to the great Sanhedrin. Adas Yisrael, how is it possible for the whole congregation to sin? Is because the Sanhedrin made a mistake. The High Court made a mistake. The Supreme Court of Israel, seated in the temple, by the temple, made a mistake. V'nelam dava, this means that the Sanhedrin issued an erroneous decision. God forbid that ever happened. Decision regarding any matter of the Torah that incurs the penalty by declaring a matter permissible. God forbid. Hakol v'asu, meaning the community acted upon their instruction. So we're talking about a situation that the entire community sinned because of the Sanhedrin, the High Court. And they'll realize the sin that they have sinned. They also bring a par. So this is like, again, like the previous par, like the Kohen Gadol that sins. The entire Jewish congregation sinned because of the Sanhedrin. They have to bring a par. And they bring it before the tent of before the Beis Hamikdash, for the Mishkan. The elders of the community shall lean their hands upon the bull. The Shachatei says, they shep the bull before God. The Kohen Gadol again brings it into the holy Beis Hamikdash, the holy Mishkan. He does the exact thing again. He sprinkles 7 times before God, before the before the tent, before the cover. Ash says, but above the Torah says before the divine curtain in the sanctuary. Why does it here mention holiness, where now the verse omits the word holiness? What happened to the Kodesh? This is compared to a king against whom a province revolted. If only a minority rebels, his cabinet remains intact. If the entire country rebels, however, his cabinet does not remain intact. Here too, when the anointed Kohen sin, referring to verse number 6, the name of his holiness was still attached to the sanctuary because the Kohen Gadol sinned, a terrible situation. But when over here we're talking when the entire Jewish nation sinned, God forbid. When they all sinned, God forbid, the holiness retracts. So therefore, it doesn't say over here the word holiness. When Adam Yishbachal Kainam is avert, the blood you should sprinkle on the horns of the altar, B'fnei Hashem, before God, Ashabei Omer, in the altar, the incense altar. It's in the Mishkan. It's called Adam, the rest of the blood. Yishbech al Yisei the Mezbeach. Ha'ila, he pours to the foundation of the outside altar. Hashab Pesach Ha'ilmei, which is in the entrance of the tent of meeting. Now she said this is the western base, which is situated opposite the entrance. So we know that it had a base. There was a base around the bottom of the altar. On the western side of that base that faced the oil moed, there was 2 holes over there at the corner that you poured the oil into, and it went straight into the ground. Verse 19, and then he shall separate all the fats from it. And he puts it on the Mizbeach. Now the problem is Rashi's bothered. Although the scripture does not mention diaphragm and the 2 kidneys, why didn't he mention, like he mentioned before, that derived from the verse below, next verse, that it says, "You shall do to the bull just like you did to the bull of the sin offering." Now, why are these details not specific here? So the whole machlekes, the Gemara brings down, the school of Rabbi Shmuel taught this can be compared to a king whose ferocious beloved friend but shortened the account of his offense because of the affection he had for him. So therefore, the Torah shortens it over here because he doesn't want to explain, because he loves the Abish loves the Jewish nation. So even though they have all sinned and it's a terrible situation, he doesn't want to explicitly talk about the sin and what he has done and how he has to rectify it. That's why it says it's short, this verse. Whatever you did to the previous par, you do to this par. This way you should do to it. And the kohen will bring forgiveness, and they will be forgiven. Rashi says, just as is delineated in the case of the bull, anointed kohen, thus included in this procedure, the sacrifice of this bull is burnt, diaphragm, 2 kidneys, which are expressed there, and not expressed here. You take out this par, take the whole animal outside the camp. The sort of very and you burn it, like you did it to the par of the Kohen Gadol. This is the sin offering of the congregation. Verse 22. Asher nasi yechta. If a leader of the Jewish people sins, and he does any of the mitzvahs of God you're not allowed to do, self-understood, he did it unintentionally, and incurring guilt. Now she says, Asher is a lashon of praise. Lashon ashrei. Why does the scripture over here use the word ashrei? Praise it is a leader that sins. What does that mean? It's expression reminiscent of dictum stating that ashrei, fortunate. Namely, what does it mean? Fortunate is a generation whose leader does not hold himself too high, but rather gives attention to bring an atonement offering for his unintentional sins. Great is a leader that says, I made a mistake. For even a leader can make a mistake. If you have a leader that doesn't have ego, and he can get up and say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, that's a great generation. It's hard to find leaders that are humble, that can get up and say, we made a mistake. And therefore, as over here, the Torah uses the word ashrei, asher, that it's great, it's praiseworthy a generation that has a leader that has the capability to say, if he made an unintentional mistake, that it can say, I've made an unintentional mistake. Verse 23, the sin that he committed is made known to him. Behavi as karbonai, then he brings his offering, sir izim, zachar tamim, an unblemished male goat. Now, says Ahida means, this could be literally understood as it is made known to him. However, here the verse has the meaning if his sin is made known to him. Many instances in the word oi is an expression im, if. And there are many instances when the im is used instead of the oi. So over here it says oi. Similarly in the verse in Exodus, oi noida kishayna, if it is known. So over here it's with if the sin is made known to him. Either it's made known to him or he realizes himself he made a sin. Haidalav, when he committed a sin, he thought it was permissible. But afterwards it became known to him that it's forbidden. He takes his hand, he leans it upon the head of the goat. You shechted in the place where you shecht any oila, burnt offering. Now Hashem before God, chatasu, he, who, it's a sin offering. Rashi says, what does that mean in the north side? In the area of the Holy Temple Court, as expressed and mentioned in the case of the oila, it's done on the north side of the Mizbeach. Chatasu is slaughtered it for this purpose. Sin offering is valid. But if you slaughtered not for the purpose, it is invalid. Again, so Torah comes to tell us what we just said. It's a chatas. We know it's a chatas. The importance is that you have to shecht it for a chatas. Everything needs to be done lishma, for the sake of God, self-understood, and for the sake of which offering it is for. The Kohen takes from the blood of the sin offering, this sin offering. He puts in the corners of the outside. So he didn't bring the blood into the holy temple. He puts the rest of the blood on the foundation of the Mizbeach. And then he takes all the fat and he brings it upon the Mizbeach, like the fats of a zevach, of the peace offering. The people of HaKoyin, and the Koyin forgives him for his sins, and he is forgiven. So Rashi says that's like the parts of the animal burnt offering and altar specified of a goat mentioned under the category of a peace offering. So you can learn whatever you do to the peace offering, you're going to do to this sin offering of a nasi, a leader that comes to do tshuva. And that completes the Chumash for today. We now go to the Tanya of the day. We continue the Tanya of the day. We complete today chapter 36 of Tanya. So the Alter Rebbe said that we had Gilui Lakus, we had revelation of God once in history, that they actually saw godliness. Royenes HaKoilis. Ata Hareisel Adas, that the Eibishter showed the Jewish people with their own eyes. They saw godliness with their eyes. They saw what is usually heard. What happened? Afterwards, after the Torah was given, the sin caused both them and the world. Both them and the world became darkened, became gross. Ad eis ketzayamim, till the end of days. So this concept, what happened at the golden calf, affected the Jewish nation and humanity until Mashiach comes. Sha'oz yizdaka hagashmi. Then the dross of the body and the world will be refined. Be able to receive the revelation of God's light, which will shine to the Jewish people, through the learning of Torah, which is called might. And through the superabundance of light which will shine upon the Jewish people, the darkness of the nations will also be lit up. And that's why it says you have to be a light to the nations. As it says, the nations will walk by your light. It's written, it says, house of Jacob, go, and we will walk along Hashem. We will walk with the light of God. As it's written, the glory of God will be revealed, and all flesh will see. Love to enter the holes in the rocks and the clefts of the boulders for fear of God and his majesty and glory. This refers to the nations who will be filled with dread of God, for it cannot be said of Israel who will be one with God, that will seek refuge from him. So that they will seek refuge from him. That's not going to happen. So the nations of the world will realize they're going to become frightened from this revelation. They'll be totally in shock of this by a Jew. It's going to be totally his natural revelation. So there'll be a revelation of God by him. It'll bring about his true reality. It'll bring about his true will and desire, which he wanted from the beginning, to be connected to God. He always had an neshama. But the nations of the world will be shocked in total dread, because they'll then realize what means Gilui Lakus. By them, it will be a total shock to the system. As it says, appear in the majestic splendor of your might over all the inhabitants of the world, including the other nations. Thus we see that in the Messianic era, godliness we reveal to all the nations of the world. And in this state lies the fulfillment and the purpose of which the world was created. So the whole world was created, not only the Jewish world, but the whole entire world. It was created for Gilui Elokus, for the concept of revelation of godliness in the world, which that's going to be accomplished now. We accomplish it now through our Torah and mitzvahs. Right now, we bring godliness to the world, but there's no Gilui. Not that the Eibush is not here, but there's no revelation. There's no Gilui Elokus. And Mir Hashem will merit through the Avodah, through our service that we do now in this world, that we do Torah mitzvahs in a time of darkness, in a place. Darkness doesn't mean that the world is dark, but it's dark to me, that I cannot see, that I cannot physically see the godliness that I've accomplished right now when I'm sitting and learning, and I'm learning Torah. And at this moment in my learning of Torah, I bring down God to the world, because you learn Torah Shebiksav, and we'll learn Torah Shebal Peh in this last half an hour, and we brought about a Gilui Elokus in the world, and it's Megilui. We brought down a Gilui Elokus in the world. By the Eibush, it's totally revealed. By God, He's totally here in an Oid Ein Sof, an infinite light. But the problem is that I don't see it, and I want to see it. Why? Why do I want to see it? Because that's the whole purpose, that I should see it. I don't see it right now because I'm not capable of seeing, because I'm living in Choshech, because there's tumah, there's impurity in the world, there's evil in the world, there's Choshech in the world, however you want to translate the word. The concept of Helam is here. And therefore, I don't see it, even though it's right over here in front of my face. And that's really the pain, that when something is in front of your face, that's why a Yid should cry from Gullus, that he's Pashut, there is Gilui Elokus in front of him. There is a revelation of God happening right now in front of my face, and I don't see it. So that you should cry out, because it's a pain for God that He wants to reveal Himself, but He can't. Not because He can't, because I cannot. Because He can't reveal Himself, because I cannot have Gilui Elokus. Because I'm not ready for Gilui Elokus. That's why there's not Gilui Elokus. Not because God is not revealed, because I am not revealed. So therefore, we are in Gullus. We are in exile. And therefore, what we are to realize, number one, is that not that God is not here. God is revealed here right now. He's begully. He is in total revelation. The problem is that He wants that we should see it begully ourselves, in a revealed way ourselves, but we need to cleanse ourselves. We need to Ruach Hatuma, and the impurity Avim in Haaretz, I will take away from the world. Once the Eibush takes away impurity from the world, then the whole world will be able to see godliness. Not only the Jews, self the Jews on a very personal level, ultimately the whole world will see godliness. And then they'll have the aspect of Haya Hashem Echad, Shema Echad. There'll be a time when the world and God and spirituality will be one concept, because that's the whole purpose of creation. And the Sava Kodesh Baruch Hu Liyis did it, but the Eibush wanted a place, a dwelling place in this world. He doesn't want to be here in a hidden way to us. He wants to be in Dida. He wants to be in a revealed way with us. He wants to be revealed. We're able to see it. Just like Matan Torah, we had the capability of seeing it. So to now, let's hope now we'll merit to the coming of Mashiach, and we'll see. We'll see God as they saw it at Matan Torah. At the Matan Torah, but the difference will be Matan Torah, they weren't ready. That's why they sinned 40 days later. When Mashiach comes, we will be ready, because we did our Avodah, we did the service, our labor in learning Torah and keeping mitzvahs in the time of darkness. So we created many levushim. We created many garments, many vessels that will give us the capability to be able to have this revelation and not be bottled and be still human beings as we are today. We'll be human beings and Mashiach comes, but we'll be able to see Gilui Lakus, be able to see this revelation of godliness. Today is the 11th day of the month, which the Tillim of the day is chapter 60 to chapter 65. If you do those 6 chapters, you would do the chitas of the day. I invite you all today, Mishem, at 10 a.m. We're going to again continue to learn a beautiful sikh of the Rebbe at 10 a.m. You're welcome to come. It's actually a sikh of the Rebbe on Purim. And as we start celebrating Purim, actually, right today, we start celebrating Purim in many aspects. As you'll learn the sikha, you'll see the Rebbe explains that we actually start Purim today besides being Tainus Esther. But there are many more connections today to Purim than does the fast of Esther. And we have actually, so we prepare ourselves starting from today until Sunday. Let us hope by Sunday, La Yehuda Ma'isa'ida v'Simcha v'Sasim v'Ikar, that we're married to the coming of Mashiach. There should be Oida, Simcha v'Sasim v'Ikar, because we're married to the coming of Mashiach and the Gilui Lakus, the revelation of God throughout the entire world. God bless you all. Have a great day. Have a meaningful fast. And with Shem, see you at 10 a.m. or tomorrow at 8 a.m. Tomorrow at 8 a.m. we'll continue to learn the chitas of the day. Have a wonderful and beautiful and happy day.